the Motel of Whispering Pines podcast, production by Lynn and Dave, episode 12, The Whispering Pines Motel. Can this get any dumber? Yes. Tom and Lucy watched as the last whiff of smoke curled out of their car's hood. Their hopes of leaving Dead Man's Gulch evaporated as fast as the remaining coolant in their radiator. Dejected but resigned, they checked back into the Whispering Pines Motel. Just as they were about to settle in for the night, a mysterious knock sounded at their door. Opening it, they were met by a man with a long flowing robe covered in constellations, a pointed hat decorated with dangling crystal balls, and a beard that practically dragged on the ground. He introduced himself as Mordecai the Mildly Magical and invited them to join him for a night of rare entertainment and imminent chaos. "Tonight," he whispered, his voice an ominous echo, "the witches of the West are gathering. They're expecting visitors, and I fear, well, I know, actually, 13 legendary things will happen." He leaned closer. "You're in for one heck of a ride if you stick around." It sounded completely absurd, but Tom and Lucy were now numb to surprises. With nothing to lose and no working car, they followed the wizard to his room, which looked like a cross between a Renaissance fair and a 1970s disco, complete with flashing lights, a fog machine, and a suspiciously glittery cauldron bubbling in the corner. Just as Mordecai was about to regale them with ancient spells, the first thing happened. Boom! The walls shook, and the entire building rattled as though struck by a small earthquake. Tom and Lucy stumbled over to the window and peered out to see airships. Dozens of them, powered by some supernatural steam engine, hovering just above the motel, raining down confetti and shouting challenges to duels. Men in aviator goggles wielded swords and flasks of questionable liquid, shouting, "We demand satisfaction." "Well, that was unexpected," Mordecai muttered, clearly thrilled. Before they could process the airborne invasion, a red blur streaked through the sky. It was none other than the Red Baron himself and his famous triplane, looping in and out of the airships, barking orders in thickly accented German and raining down sauerkraut packets. He circled back and threw in a good-natured "Guten Abend" to Tom and Lucy before returning to harass the airships. The third thing was equally baffling. A rumble of hooves approached, and suddenly the ground was flooded with a whole cavalry of spectral Native American warriors on horseback, painted for war and whooping as they galloped through the mist. They didn't seem to mind the airships or the triplane, giving both a wide berth as they formed a circle around the motel, chanting and drumming in unison. "Visitors sure are piling up tonight," Lucy whispered, awestruck. "Brace yourselves for thing 4, Mordecai said, rubbing his hands gleefully. And sure enough, a sleigh jingled into view, pulled by enormous reindeer with antlers twice the size of their heads. Riding shotgun was Santa Claus, flanked by elves wielding candy canes that looked suspiciously sharp. Santa climbed out of the sleigh, pointing at the airships. "You all made the naughty list years ago," he boomed, his voice like thunder. The elves charged forward, hurling peppermints like ninja stars. Then came thing 5. It started innocuously, with small tufts of fur floating down from above. Tom squinted, trying to make sense of it, just as an army of Easter bunnies hopped into view, brandishing enormous pastel-colored eggs that they lobbed like grenades. A group of elves hissed, "Not the rabbits again," and a peppermint and egg battle commenced. Tom and Lucy watched in stunned silence, practically glued to the windowsill. "Now we're getting somewhere," Mordecai chuckled. "Thing 6 will surely give you a real fright." A ghastly creak echoed through the room. From under the bed, a wrinkled, spidery hand reached out, clawing its way up the bedspread. It was the boogeyman, the notorious monster who lived under the bed, dragging a bag of dusty socks, broken dreams, and assorted lint. The boogeyman croaked, "Who keeps stealing my lint balls?" before giving Mordecai a menacing glare. Then, with a thud that shook the room, Bigfoot lumbered in. He carried a sack of pine cones and slapped his chest like a wrestling champion. "I'm here to settle the score," he roared, before catching sight of the boogeyman and backing up in sudden fear. "Whoa, never mind." As if this wasn't absurd enough, Thing 8 burst through the door, a full-on circus parade, led by clowns on unicycles honking horns, jugglers tossing flaming bowling pins, and a tiny elephant wearing a tutu. The clowns seemed to take a liking to Bigfoot, surrounding him in a bizarre dance routine that he tried to resist but eventually succumbed to, joining in with a surprisingly graceful pirouette. Tom was doubled over with laughter when Thing 9 arrived, a posse of lumberjacks from Seattle, wielding axes and flannels, chanting in unison as they joined the battle against the airships, occasionally stopping to comb their beards and compare axe sizes. "And here come the dairy farmers from Wisconsin," Lucy exclaimed as Thing 10 arrived. A tractor convoy rumbled onto the scene, farmers hurling cheese wheels at the Red Baron, who dodged each one with a surprisingly agile barrel rolls, shouting, "Nine, I hate cheddar!" The final three things arrived as a collective delegation. Robert E. Lee and Ulysses S. Grant, riding side by side, giving each other begrudging nods of respect as they dismounted. They were accompanied by Paul Bunyan, axe slung over his shoulder, Abraham Lincoln, tipping his stovepipe hat, and George Washington, holding a suspiciously large cherry pie. Bringing up the rear was none other than Napoleon Bonaparte, who wasted no time barking orders in rapid-fire French. Mordecai, the mildly magical, looked at Tom and Lucy, his eyes twinkling. "Quite the spectacle, isn't it? I told you the witches' convention brought out the weird ones." As Tom and Lucy looked around at the most bizarre assortment of historical figures, legendary creatures, and holiday mascots ever assembled, they finally gave in to laughter. Just then the Easter bunnies and the clowns broke into a spontaneous musical number, while the Red Baron looped overhead, and Napoleon ran around shouting "Viva la Revolution" at the lumberjacks. "Well," Lucy said, wiping tears of laughter from her cheeks, "this was definitely worth staying another night for." Just as they thought the night couldn't get any crazier, Mordecai grinned and said, "Now, about tomorrow."